Dear students, today we shall be talking about the phosphorus cycle. We shall be talking about the key points about the phosphorus cycle and how this cycle operates. Before proceeding, it is my request to you all to like and subscribe my channel BioLearnia. Phosphorus is an essential nutrient which is found in the macromolecules of humans and other organisms, including their DNA. Humans contain 80% of their phosphorus in teeth and bones. This very cycle is very slow, and in nature this exists in the form of the phosphate ions. So in nature it exists in the form of the phosphate ion. Phosphorus is also a limiting nutrient, just like that of the nitrogen, or nutrient that is most scarce and thus limits the growth. And when nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers are carried in the runoff to the lakes and oceans, they cause eutrophication, as I told you in my earlier lecture, and they cause the overgrowth of the algae. The algae may deplete oxygen and the water and may create dead zones. So just by consuming the oxygen present in the water bodies, they create the dead zones, and it is because of the limited oxygen, it is because of the deficiency of the oxygen, all the organisms die, or either they just get away. That is why they make those very areas as the dead zones. Let us have a little bit of introduction. It is an essential nutrient for the living organisms. It is a key part of nucleic acids, as I told you, just as in the case of DNA, and in the case of phospholipids that form our cell membrane. So it is the essential nutrient which is present in the living organisms as well. It is present in nucleic acids, just like DNA, and it is also present in phospholipids that form our cell membrane. So as in the form of the calcium phosphate, it also makes up the supportive components of our bones. And in nature, phosphorus is often a limiting nutrient. In other words, we can say that the nutrient that is in the shortest supply and puts limit on the growth. And this is particularly true for the aquatic and the freshwater ecosystems. So, phosphorus cycle is a biogeochemical process that involves the movement of phosphorus through the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. So it means that it has a role in the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere as a whole. So what are the steps that are present in the phosphorus cycle? It is withering, it is absorption by the animals, absorption by plants, and return to the environment through the decomposition. So phosphorus cycle operates by the process of the withering, absorption by the animals, absorption by the plants, and return to the environment through the process of. The phosphorus cycle is slow as compared to other biogeochemical cycles such as water, carbon, and nitrogen cycles. In nature, phosphorus is found mostly in the form of phosphate ions, and the phosphate compounds are found in the sedimentary rocks. And as the rocks weather or wear down over a long period of time, the phosphorus they contain slowly leaches into the surface water and soils. Volcanic ash, volcanic ash, aerosols, and mineral dust can also be significant phosphate sources. Though phosphorus has no real gas phase, unlike other elements such as carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. So the phosphorus cycles in only two modes, that is the soil and water. It has no atmospheric phase, that means it has no gaseous phase. So for example, in this very picture, this picture also depicts that, for example, the fertilizer that is added to the soil, that is taken up by the plants as well. The plants are eaten by the animals, or the crop residue and the manure return phosphate to the soil, or by the runoff it goes to the water bodies and it can cause eutrophication. And many a time this very phosphate from the soil, it settles down, or it forms the minerals of the organic phosphate, and it is again made available to the plants and animals. And many times it is a fixed phosphate. For some, many times the phosphate reaches to the bottom of the water bodies, and it can get stored in the sedimentary rocks as well. Over long periods of the time, phosphorus containing sedimentary rock may be moved from the ocean to land, or by the geological or by a process which we call it as a geological uplift. However, this process is very slow, and the average phosphate ion that has an oceanic residence time in the ocean, that is of 20,000 to 1 lakh years. So it is a very slow process wherein the average phosphate ion has an oceanic residence time in the ocean of about 20,000 to 1 lakh years. So when we talk about the eutrophication and the dead zones, most fertilizers used in agriculture and on lawns and gardens contain both nitrogen and phosphorus, which may be carried to the aquatic ecosystems in the surface runoff. Fertilizers carried in runoff may cause excessive growth of algae or other microbes which were previously limited by the nitrogen or phosphorus. So this process is called as eutrophication. So at least in some cases, phosphorus, not nitrogen, seems to be the main driver of the eutrophication. So many times it is seen that it is not the nitrogen, but it is the phosphorus which is the main driver for the eutrophication. So why this very eutrophication is harmful? Because many times these very algae, they become abundant, they make the taste of the water and the smell bad, and they also have the ability to produce the toxic compounds which we call as the algal toxins. So when all these algae die and are decomposed by the microbes, large amounts of the oxygen are used up by their bodies during their breakdown. This spike in oxygen usage can sharply lower the dissolved oxygen levels in the water and may lead to death by hypoxia, that is because of the less oxygen or the lack of the oxygen, for other aquatic organisms such as shellfish and finfish. So that is why eutrophication is very harmful. Regions of the lakes and oceans that are depleted of oxygen due to a nutrient influx, we call them as the dead zones. The number of the dead zones has increased for several years, and more than 400, near about more than 400 dead zones existed in 2008 alone. And one of the worst dead zones is of the coast of the United States in the Gulf of Mexico. Fertilizer runoff from the Mississippi River basin created dead zone of over 8,463 square miles. And dead zones are found in the areas of high industrialization and population density around the world as well. So how this eutrophication can be prevented or reduced? So the fertilizers or the phosphorus containing detergents, improperly disposed of sewage, can all be the sources of the nitrogen and phosphorus that drive the eutrophication, that are the main reasons of the eutrophication. So using less fertilizer, eliminating phosphorus containing detergents, and ensuring that the sewage does not enter the waterways, for example from a leaky septic system, are all the ways by which the individuals, companies, and the governments can help to reduce the eutrophication.